Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second part of our series, Calming the Commotion, helping your child prepare for the whole new first day of school. My name is Cynthia Robinson. I'm the Child and Youth Mental Health Coordinator with the Hamilton Family Health Team. And I'd like to welcome you again to this webinar. I hope that we'll learn a lot from one another. Let's see now why this isn't working here. All right. We're all in unprecedented times. That is the jargon that's been going around for quite some time in relation to the COVID-19 pandemic. Things just seem unsettled. There isn't really a clear path about how things are going to go, what has been a typical kind of pattern or a typical kind of way that things would unfold in the past is very different now. And that's because we're in very unfamiliar territory. That's a bit problematic for us as human beings because our brain heavily relies on experience to make decisions. Being able to base our decisions and our behaviors on previous experiences is really something that sets us aside from many species. It's how we've survived and thrived as a species, being able to learn from previous experiences. But the current climate that we're in right now is completely new to most of us. We don't have a lot on which to base our experiences and our perceptions. And this is even more pronounced for our children. Humans like predictability. We like a sense of certainty. And both of which of those are not strong in our world today. And that's particularly problematic for children who respond really well to structure and routine. Structure, routine, predictability, these are all things that help to bring a sense of security and calm and safety to our children. And that kind of creates this commotion kind of experience. It's not clear, it's not settled, it's not predictable and familiar. Today's presentation is all about how you can help instill a sense of calm in your child. It's about how you can help your child to learn how to manage the uncertainties that we find ourselves in our society, with particular reference to what they can expect in September with the back to school routine of what that's going to look like for them. Now, you may be asking yourself, but how do I instill a sense of calm in my child when I don't feel overly calm myself? Well, there's actually a webinar for that. Back at the end of June, I presented parenting during uncertain times, how to feel confident in the decisions that you make. If you would like to access that, that will be available on our website by the end of this week for sure. And it's free. It's a free access. You just click on the link. It'll be on our group's resource page. That webinar really focused largely on, as the title says, making decisions, feeling confident, even when the situation in which we're in doesn't really kind of foster that confidence. Okay, but what are you going to do in the meantime? Well, we're going to talk about how to introduce some strategies, some different caregiving methods, and some different ways of helping to prepare your child with these uncertainties, helping them to cope, helping them to deal with the situations that we're in. We're going to start first by talking about communication and the value of communicating with our child, of validating our kid, of kind of connecting with them as a dialogue kind of experience. We're going to talk about the practical things that we can do to help to prepare our child. We're going to talk about challenging unhelpful thinking patterns because our thoughts can have such a profound effect on the way that we're functioning and on how we're dealing in our day-to-day. We'll have some strategies for emotion regulation and how you can help your child to have practical techniques that they can use when they're feeling a bit dysregulated. We'll talk about the importance of monitoring both what goes in and what comes out. I'll talk a bit more about that to explain that later. And then always, always, always is so important to engage in self-care yourself. So we'll highlight that as an important thing as well. So the basics, I think, of what we need to really focus on is there is no right way for your child to feel about their return to school. If they're anxious, if they're excited, both are valid, both are okay, they're expected, they're normal responses. Another thing which kind of relates to that is anticipatory anxiety is to be expected, not only for your child, but maybe for yourself as a caregiver. Again, it's a very uncertain territory. It's all new. This is new for all of us, not only caregivers and children, but schools, communities, governments. This is new for all of us. Of course, we're going to feel a bit unsettled about what to expect come September. It's important to remember knowledge is power. It's not only important for us to understand the overall situation as much as we can, but it's also crucially important to be in touch with your child's perceptions and beliefs themselves. We need to know what's going on in the little minds of the ones that we're caring for, whether they're 4 years old or they're 17 years old. We need to be able to help them to have a realistic understanding and to be able to challenge misperceptions and beliefs that might be hindering their functioning and their ability to cope. And there's power in validation. Validate, validate, validate. This will be one of the strategies or frameworks that we're going to talk about in a little bit. So when we're talking about opening up the lines of communication, it's kind of a difficult thing, because when we're thinking about what is my child going to do for school in September, it's not like it's an easy choice. For some families, they're going to prioritize having maybe the home learning. Maybe that's because they are able to do that. They have a caregiver that will be able to be available to that child, or they've got someone that can take care of their child, and work really will be accommodating. For other families, maybe they would want to have that option, but for financial situations, work obligations, whatever the situation is, they're unable to do that. For other families, maybe the child desperately needs to have that social interaction that they would get in a school setting, but for whatever reason, that's not going to be possible because of, I don't know, they're immunocompromised or whatever. I guess basically what I'm trying to say here is it's not an easy answer about, it's not an easy decision about what school will look like for children and for the families. And so I think because of that, it really helps to emphasize the importance of communicating openly as a family and with your child. Even though your child can't dictate what the choice is going to be, it's very important to allow them to have a voice so that they can share what their thoughts are, talking about how they feel about the return to school, whether it's home or in the school building itself. What are their preferences? Talking together as a family, like, will their preference work with what the family situation is? And asking them what they know about the risks or the situation of what it's going to look like. Because again, you might have a child who has very misinformed information about the risks of COVID, of the risks of staying home. You want to make sure that you help them to really understand a realistic and an accurate perspective about what's going on. You want to try not to impose your views on them unless it's absolutely necessary. You want to check in on how they feel. You want to check in, on how you feel, because children are really great experts at picking up on the nonverbal cues that we may be giving. We might be thinking we're really good at hiding what we're truly thinking about stuff, but kids can really pick up on that. So you want to really check in with yourself about how you're feeling about this whole situation, because in doing so, it's going to help you to be a bit more calm and a bit more able to feel prepared to have these conversations. You want to allow your children to ask you questions. You want to let them ask you the really difficult questions. You want to let them ask and tell you whatever it is that they're thinking and feeling, because you are the safe person in their life, the person that they can go to for answers, and you are the safe person to help them to process and to really think through what it is that's been going on in their little minds. And we want to be open and honest in an age-appropriate way. We don't want to burden them with too much information if they're very little, and we also don't want to annoy them by trying to protect them from information that they should know as older children. We want to expect and respect that every child will have a different perspective and an outlook on their return to school. You may have two children who have very different perspectives and very different feelings about what that will look like, and very different desires about what they want that to look like for themselves. You want to let your child know that it's okay to feel whatever the feelings are that they have, and for them to know that they're not alone. You want to remind them that you are there to help them and to support them. You're going to be with them, and reinforce to them, especially for those children that might be worried about a return to school, that we're all in the same situation. All children are going to be having these very big feelings and very conflicting feelings. All children have had a gap in learning. They don't have to worry about, when I go back to school, I wasn't in school since March, so I'm going to really struggle academically. But all kids were in that same situation. So you want to normalize the experience and the worries and the fears that they might be experiencing themselves. And again, just reminding them that it's a new situation for everyone, including the adults, the schools, the government, and that newness doesn't have to be a scary thing. I didn't say this at the beginning and I forgot, my apologies. If you have any questions at all, feel free to just send them in the chat box. We have Kiara, who's one of my colleagues, who will be monitoring the questions. And if it's a question that would be best answered in the moment of when you send it, she's going to just interrupt me and we'll address it. But if it's a question that can be held on until the very end, we'll do that as well. So feel free. I'm very willing to have questions throughout the presentation. So how do I help my child to process their big emotions? Validation is key. Through validating your child's emotions, you show them that they are important and what they feel is important. It helps them to feel heard and understood. I can't remember the number, but I think it's as much as 50%. Just in naming the emotion that somebody's experiencing, either if they do it themselves or someone does it for them, it can reduce the intensity of that difficult emotion by up to 50%. So saying to your child, it looks like you're feeling really upset right now. The feeling that person experiences or that child experiences in that moment is, yes, someone gets me, you understand. Yes, I'm feeling really upset right now, and it helps them to feel a lot more regulated. It's the first step to being able to work beyond that dysregulation. So bringing that validation from just that acknowledgement to something that's more long-term of an impact is through emotion coaching. There's an emotion coaching framework that we're going to talk about in the next slide, and this helps to further lessen the intensity of the emotional distress that your child experiences, and it allows you to be able to help support them to be able to both manage their big emotions and then engage in some problem solving around how to proceed despite the emotional experience that they're struggling with in that moment. Emotion coaching is a framework and a concept that comes from Dr. John Gottman, and it really helps to unpack within the this framework is within 5 steps on how you as the caregiver can provide scaffolding support to your child in managing the emotional distress that they experience on a day-to-day life. If you think about it, we as adults, we all experience big emotions. And if you're anything like me, there are times when you experience a big emotion where you just feel that dysregulation and it's really uncomfortable and it's not a good feeling. And it just feels as though you don't really know what to do. Well, I'm in my 40s and I've been dealing with emotions for 40 plus years, and it still can be hard for me. Imagine how much more difficult it is for a young child or even a teenager. They haven't been dealing with this as long as we have. And so it can be really helpful to have a caregiver, someone who has a bit more of experience in dealing with our own experience, which could be different than your child. So just keep that in mind. But it can be really helpful to have that supportive listening and supportive guidance to be able to teach them how to manage their distress. The first step, as you can see down in the bottom right, is to be aware of your child's emotions. So if you see your child seems to be really struggling with emotional distress, either anger or worry, you want to try to think about, okay, now what is it that's going on for them? You want to try to really identify that emotion yourself. Then taking the opportunity, rather than, oh, here it is, she's losing her mind again, trying to frame it as, this is an opportunity. This is step 2. This is an opportunity for us to engage in some connection and for me to help her to maybe provide a bit of support in teaching her how to process what's going on for her. So first, you're identifying the emotion from your perspective, then you're recognizing this not as an issue or as a problem, you're trying to reframe it as an opportunity for teaching. The next step is to help your child verbally label their emotion. It looks like, Susie, it looks like right now you're really feeling sad or you're really feeling worried. That allows the child not only to feel validated, because if you've got the right emotion of what they're experiencing, they're like, oh, she gets it. Or it also allows them to provide correction. No, mommy, I'm not feeling sad right now. I'm feeling angry. Or no, I'm not feeling angry. I'm feeling worried. It allows that communication back and forth. Not only does helping to label your child's emotion help them to identify what it is, but if you're able to use different words, emotion words, it can help expand their emotional vocabulary. We experience more than happy, sad, mad, and glad. But those are the big ones that we often use. So if we're able to say, it sounds like you're feeling frustrated, or it sounds like you're feeling distressed, or it sounds like you're feeling really angry, although that's kind of a common word, you're able to help expand that emotional vocabulary for your child, which is going to be really important for them in the long run to be able to really express and share with others what they're feeling. Then you communicate empathy and understanding. Yeah, you know, so it sounds like you're feeling really frustrated because your sister took your toy from you, and you feel really angry when that happens, and it makes you feel like it's really unfair. I feel that way too. I get it. Like, that would be really frustrating. So you're trying to communicate empathy. You're not saying little sister is the worst sister in the world, and you agree. What you're doing is you're reflecting to your child, I hear you, and I can understand where these emotions are coming from for you and why those emotions are happening. And I would probably feel the same if I was in your shoes. The final step is to set limits and engage in problem solving. This is where you say, this isn't where you actually say, this is what you should do. You need to do A, B, C, and D. Because remember, step 2, this is an opportunity for connection and teaching. So this step 5 is where you say, what do you think we can do about this? How can we resolve this problem? What do you think you can do to help yourself feel better or to fix the situation? So really what you're doing in this whole framework is you're guiding your child from first feeling as though they are heard and important and what's going on for them is valid, to helping them to express and really fully think through what the emotional experience is that they're having, to feeling again that you get it, and then guiding them through a resolution, how they can progress to the next step with more direction. Common emotion coaching phrases are, it's okay to be upset, it's good to let it out, how you feel right now is not going to last forever. It's okay how you feel, to feel how you're feeling. It will pass. You will feel better soon. And I really like the last one where you're modeling for them how to cope. Let's take a breath. Let's take a break. Let's sit down. Let's pause for a minute. Because sometimes kids don't really know what to do with the tumultuous kind of emotions that are going on for them. We want to take the opportunity to engage in some self-care and some calming strategies there. So that's a little bit about how we can help our child with, communicating with them and connecting with them and engaging in that, that kind of dialogue together. The next step that we're going to review is more of a practical thing. How are we going to prepare our children for what we believe it's going to actually look like? Oops. So the first thing that you're going to need to do is you're going to need to decide as a family, what is back to school going to look like? Is it going to be sending your child back into the actual classroom? Or are you going to be the family that's going to try the home instruction or the supportive learning through the online resources that boards of education are going to create? Once that's done, you're going to want to try and get a handle on what the realities might look like for each situation for your child. You're going to want to review the health and safety skills and the routines and the day-to-day of what to expect. So this slide's really devoted to in-school learning. Keep in mind the boards of education are still in the process of preparing and submitting their proposals for what it's going to look like within their specific boards. This slide, this presentation has been created based on the recommendations from the Ontario government, which may or may not be the same for particular boards, okay? In preparing, especially young children, but I think all ages, it's really important to review with them how to do proper hand washing. There's lots of videos online. There's some resources that I have at the end of this presentation that we'll have from the Ontario government that have little videos and little ways that you can, resources for caregivers to kind of go over all of these practical skills about health and safety. You're going to want to teach them how to wear their mask properly, how to put it on properly, just touching the sides, not the front part, not putting it down on a table, not touching the mask with their hands and all that kind of stuff. Respiratory etiquette is a very fancy schmancy way of teaching them how to cough and sneeze. We don't want them doing it with their hands, even if they have a mask on, because the germs can come through that mask if you're sneezing or whatever. So obviously using the elbow for coughing and sneezing and making sure your child practices all of these things to be able to implement them easier when they're in the school environment. Explaining to them things about physical distancing. And the very last thing there is talking about the greater importance on making sure your child doesn't share food with their friends at school. But all of these things we want to balance with a rational and confident approach rather than fear-based approach. We don't want our kids to be all of a sudden feeling like, oh, I'm having to wash my hands a whole lot more because I'm no longer just only at home and I'm wearing these masks and it's because I'm gonna, get this awful virus. No, we want to help them to see this as proactive measures that they can take to help to increase their safety rather than measures that they have to take in order to prevent themselves from the scary thoughts that they can sometimes have in their mind. So rational and confident approach rather than a fear-based approach. You're going to want to touch on what are the routines in the day-to-day going to look like. Talking about things like cohort learning, which basically means your child could probably expect that they're going to be put into smaller groups of kids and to be spending the day with the same kids within that cohort, whether it's their classroom or a subset of the classroom. Making sure that secondary school students understand about the in-person, even if they're going to the actual school, that there will also be an online component to their learning as well. There's likely going to be staggered days of different lunches for different age groups, and recesses will be different, or they'll be having recess inside. I'm not quite sure about what that's going to look like specifically, but understanding that there will be staggered days. talking with them if they're bus users, that they're the school bus users, that there will be travel considerations. The requirement for wearing the face mask is going to be an expectation for grades 4 and up, and that there will likely be a greater effort toward hand washing and all of that. And making sure that your child knows about the directional signage, that there's going to be arrows probably on the floor showing them where to go. If you're unsure about what the plans are, just continue to check the school board website or your school website, because that information should be shared within the coming weeks. You're also going to want to review what it will look like if you're doing remote learning as the option. You're going to want to make sure that you understand from the school's perspective and then also from your own perspective. My understanding from my communication with people within the board and from what I've seen online is that this online learning, remote learning, is going to look very different than what it did in March, April, May, and June. It's going to be a lot more structured. There's going to be a lot more interaction with the teachers and instructional learning and stuff than last year. So making sure that children who do end up doing remote learning, that they are aware of that. And I think it's very important to have a day-to-day focus on what the routine is going to look like. Just because your child is doing remote learning doesn't mean that they shouldn't have a regular sleep and wake schedule. Physical activity is a really important thing to our daily lives. Having a specific time period in which they do their learning periods, and having expectations around non-school related screen time. And then you're also going to want as a family to think about the practical needs, like where's your child going to be doing their work? Do they have access to a tablet, to a computer? Is that something you're going to need to work out with the school as well? So that's kind of the practical stuff. What do we do about supporting our child with the scary thoughts that sometimes can come into their heads? How do we help our child become a detective? Kids really seem to resonate with this kind of an analogy. When they have these bullied thoughts that come into their minds that, oh, I can't go to school because if I go to school, I'm going to get COVID and die. We really want to help them to be a detective to test that theory out, because what we know is that our thoughts can have a profound impact on our emotions and the ways in which we behave. And our actions can have a very profound effect on our thoughts and the ways that we feel. And our emotions can also have an effect on how we think and what we do. It's a big cyclical kind of pattern that the thoughts impact our behaviors, impact our emotions, and around and around. This is all based on cognitive behavioral therapy. I'm not going to be able to do this therapeutic intervention justice in explaining it to you today within the confines of this webinar, but there's so many resources online, and there are a lot of YouTube videos that you can access. To do cognitive behavioral therapy where you're challenging your thoughts, traditionally there's a 7-column framework that you use. I have 4 here because I think it's giving you enough that you can support your kid to process and challenge their thoughts. So the first column, we have the worried thought. This is where you identify what is the thought that your child is having that's causing them distress, and really understanding the triggering situation or whatever it is that's going on for them. So in this situation, for the example, the thought is, if I go to school, I'm going to catch COVID-19 and I will die. That is the worry thought. You get your child to be a detective. What's the proof for this thought? What's the proof against this thought? And then what's the final verdict? It's kind of like a courtroom drama where there's the defense attorney defending the worry thought. There's the prosecutor that's going to challenge the worry thought. And then the judge will come up with the final verdict. So if I go to school, I'm going to catch COVID-19 and I'm going to die. The evidence that supports this theory is people do catch COVID-19 and people have died from COVID-19. That's just a fact. But what's the evidence to challenge this thought as being fully true? Well, the numbers of COVID-19 are decreasing and they're currently very low in Ontario. I know that my school is taking precautions that will keep me safe. I am empowered, I am able to also do things that will help me to keep myself safe, like washing my hands and wearing a mask and following physical distancing rules. And when kids don't often get COVID-19, and if they do, it's most often they don't get very sick with it at all. So the death rate of COVID-19 in kids is almost insignificant compared to the numbers. So when your child is looking at these two columns, as a caregiver, you're going to want to really help them come up with quality evidence that challenges the worry thought, but you also don't want to minimize the evidence that supports the worry thought, because if you don't really do a lot of justice to that the second column that supports the worry thought, it's going to feel as though you're glossing over, you're not validating the situation and their real emotions about it. And they're not going to come up with a balanced thought that's going to be believable for them. After they look at the two columns, hopefully the idea is that they're going to be able to come up with a more realistic, balanced verdict, which in this situation, the COVID-19 virus is real, but there are things I can do to keep myself safe. There are also resources in the community around how to do this. There is a group that's offered through the Ron Joyce Children's Health Center called No Fear for 7 to 12-year-olds. I believe the next time that they're going to be offering it will be in October. It's going to be a Zoom, like online virtual group. And one of the resources that I've given you at the end, the McMaster page, will be able to provide you with more information about that. So, what about calming strategies? What do you do in the moment when your kid is just really dysregulated and really upset? One of the best things that we can do is to engage in deep breathing. I did talk about this the last time. What happens, the last webinar that you can access online, what can happen when we're feeling distress or worried is that our body goes into what's called the sympathetic nervous response system. And this is where our body becomes activated. Our heart rate increases, our blood pressure rises, our digestion slows down. This is just our body's in like a hyper arousal state. Part of that, our breathing becomes more shallow and faster pace. So by slowing down your breathing, by deep diaphragmatic breathing, breathing deeply into your diaphragm, you are actually 100% of the time going to experience at least a slight improvement in your physiological symptoms. Because when you breathe slowly, you force your body to slow down. You're forcing the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the calming system, where the heart rate decreases, your breathing slows, and your blood pressure lowers, and all that kind of stuff. So it's not something that's going to make everything perfectly better, but you will experience, if you're doing it correctly, a slowdown in that revved up physiological response, which can be a profound experience when someone's feeling distressed. So how do you do it? It's really fun to teach this to kids because they actually tend to do better with deep breathing than we as adults. As you get older, you tend to carry your distress and your stress within your chest, and sometimes adults seem to breathe more into their chest. If you look at an infant and they're breathing, you notice that their belly is moving a lot. So that's the kind of movement that you want. You want your belly moving. So if you put your hand on your chest and your hand on your belly, then you take a deep breath. The goal is to have the belly button area to expand more, because that means you're filling in the diaphragm. It doesn't mean that your chest can't expand as well, but you fill your diaphragm first and then the chest can expand as well. It's fun to teach this to kids, as I said, because the best way to do this, I have found, is by having the person laying down on their back. So before bedtime, your child's lying on their bed, they can either put their hand on their belly or they can put a stuffy on their belly, and the goal is to have their belly move the hand or the stuffy without using their muscles. It's just the air. Breathing in through their nose and out through their mouth. What I found to be the most effective is breathing in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4 or more. The reason the 4 or more is because when you exhale longer than you inhale, you're actually working in a more effective way to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, the part of your body that helps to induce that sense of calm. My recommendation is when people are trying to learn how to breathe deeply and more effectively is to do this with at least 10 cycles before sleep at night. Sometimes it's important to just do a regular breath in between because sometimes people can feel a bit dizzy. If that does happen, then you have a regular breath. If not, you can just keep doing the cycle. It's not bad to just do in for 4, out for 4, hold for 4, out for 4 or more 10 times. And it's really important to remind your child to practice this when they are feeling calm, because if the only time they're going to implement it is when they're already feeling activated, it's going to be not as efficient for them in their learning of it. Grounding techniques are other really great strategies to have kind of in your kid's back pocket, little techniques that they can use if they're feeling as though they're experiencing some dysregulation. I think this picture is perfect of the little boy with the thoughts going around. When distressed, it's the visual I always get in my mind. It's almost like your brain becomes, your head becomes this like angry bee's nest of like thoughts just buzzing around all around, in the way that this little boy's thoughts seem to be going there. Grounding techniques can help to calm that down and to quiet that down. Some simple strategies. The 5 senses activity is one that can be really effective. All these grounding techniques just kind of bring you into the moment. It kind of takes you out of there, the buzzing, and it brings you into that, the present, the here, the now. So the 5 senses activity is very simple, where you get your child to go around the room and tell you 5 things that they can see, 5 things that they can hear, 5 things that they can feel physically, and that's not things that they go up and they touch. It's just sitting where they are right now. What can they feel? So if I'm reflecting on things that I can feel right now, I can feel my hair on my neck. Oh, I touched it. Shouldn't be touching. I can feel my hair on my neck. I can feel my bottom on the chair and my shoes on my feet. Like, those are the things you want to be talking about, getting them to think. And then you can never find 5 things for taste and smell, but you really want them to try to see if can they taste anything in their mouth? Can they smell anything in the air? These are things that it's just the 5 senses, and they can do it. They can do all of these anywhere. The next activity is the ABC activity. I really like this one. It helps not only with grounding, but it can help with sleep when someone's thoughts are racing, your little kid's thoughts are racing. And it's very versatile. It's going through the alphabet based on different themes. So maybe the theme is animals. So your child will go through and they'll list an animal for every letter, or as many animals as they can for every letter. So aardvark, butterfly, cat, dog, going through the alphabet that way. They might want to identify places in the world that they would like to visit, or favorite foods, or different characters on TV that they like that go with the letters. A room search is similar to the 5 senses activity, but it's a little different in the sense that your child would be looking around the room for things that fall within a category. So it might be looking around the room and identifying all of the things that are green, or all of the things that have sharp corners, or all of the things that are homemade, or things that, you know, are toys. Just doing a room search in the categories. Doing something in their mind that they really enjoy, baking cupcakes in their mind, visualizing it and going through the specific steps, and doing the measuring and doing the stirring and all the different steps to whatever the activity is, playing basketball or doing something that they enjoy. And then the last recommendation is something like spelling words backwards, or counting backwards by 7. If you're really good at math, that's a great one. For me, that would just cause more distress and frustration. But for some people, it's a really fun thing to do. Mindfulness meditation is something else that I talked a lot more in my previous presentation, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it here, but I did borrow this slide from that presentation because I think that mindfulness and meditation are foundational to the ways in which we can cope and flourish in our lives. I think that our society is slowly but surely jumping on taking this mindfulness meditation as seriously as what it should be, how it should be taken. It can have a profound, long-lasting, permanent improvement in the functioning of our brains and in our distress tolerance, in our concentration. It can have a profound impact on chronic pain. There's so many benefits. So I've identified some apps here that you can use. They're both for ISO and Android devices. The first 4 are free. The last 3 there is a cost associated with them. My go-to is Insight Timer. The first one, I think there's something like 24,000 meditations on there that are free, and they're in different categories. There's a whole bunch of them that are child-specific as well. And then Smiling Mind is for families. Ninja Focus is for older children. Breathe, Think, Do with Sesame is for younger kids. I think it's really important for us to keep that watchful eye. So we identified it at the very beginning. We want to make sure that we monitor what's going in. We don't want our child to be bombarded with sensationalistic media coverage, including social media, or misinformation that can be spread around on social media. We want to be accessing age-appropriate and relevant and accurate information. And for yourselves as caregivers or older kids, there's some websites there that are reliable sources of information. Not only do we have to watch what's going in, we want to watch what's coming out. We want to be mindful and keeping an eye out for indicators of signs of distress or indicators that our child is not coping well. If you feel as though the worry or the distress or whatever it is that your child is experiencing is impacting their life in a way that it's actually starting to affect their functioning, their sleep, their connection with other people, their appetite, their sense of well-being, their physical kind of responses of maybe they have a lot of stomach aches or a lot of headaches. It's all very different than what they experienced before. It might be important for you to schedule an appointment with your family physician just to talk about that. Depending on the age of your child, it might be important for them to be connected with mental health supports, or if you have a younger child, it might be important for you as a caregiver to get some parental support so that you can best help your child to be able to navigate these very difficult things that sometimes children can be affected by. And as stated before, don't forget about you. Self-care is so important. If we as caregivers don't engage in self-care, it's going to be really hard for us to nourish and take care of the little ones who are in our care. And so there are a variety of different strategies of things that you can do for self-care. If none of these really resonate with you, oh my goodness, all you have to do is self-care list on Google and you can come up with lists. Like I've seen lists that have like hundreds of different ideas. It's not just about going and getting that pedicure or buying yourself a nice shirt or something, because who can really afford those things all the time? Sometimes it can be as simple as, I'm going to sit extra long in the bathroom and I'm going to just do some deep breathing myself to take care of myself, because taking care of me is important. And that can be the self-care that you do that day if you've got a really particularly busy day. I promised some online resources. So there's a couple of pages here. The first 4 are COVID-19 specific supports from UNICEF and the Ontario government. And then I've got some school-specific websites. I have some websites. There's a great YouTube video on how to do emotion coaching, and Mental Health Foundations is a website that has a lot of resources for caregivers on emotion-focused family therapy, which is a lot of emotion coaching as well. Our community resources, the family resources page of McMaster's Children's Hospital, that's where you can go to find the information on No Fear. The Growing Together guide is there. There's some webinars. Sorry, I don't think they were webinars. There are some resources available online about anxiety and stuff like that. And then there's also Contact Hamilton. Contact Hamilton. If your physician is not a member of the Hamilton Family Health Team, or if you don't have access to a mental health counselor through your physician's office, Contact Hamilton is the central referral agency for the community of Hamilton, where you can access free mental health supports for children, and that's their website there. And then I've got some medical resources, just places you can go for information that were identified earlier on. And so that brings us to the end of our presentation. I'd like to open up this time for if there were any questions for anyone that anyone submitted. So Kira, I don't know if anyone submitted anything, or if you have a question and you haven't submitted it, please do so now, and I'll do my best to respond.
Cynthia. Nothing's come across so far, but we can give it a few minutes if you'd like.
Okay. I'll just talk a little bit again. One thing I did forget to mention with the McMaster website, the resources page, there's also, it's called Your Space, and Your Space is a website that is Hamilton specific, that has been created with the lead agency for children's mental health and various community partners and various clinicians within the community. And there are a variety of webinars that are posted on that website. And this is a website that is going to continually be contributed to. So even if there isn't something that may interest you right now, keep checking back, because there will be more webinars submitted. And I know that there's presentations from places like McMaster, from Linwood Charlton Hall, and different child and adolescent services and different organizations within our community right now.